Max Verstappen went from fastest in opening practice to stopping the next session with one dangerous mistake at Spa. He ran wide at Stavelot, threw gravel across the racing line, and forced a red flag. But here is what makes this much bigger than one driving error. There is no confirmed investigation into Verstappen. No announced steward's case. No official penalty threat. The real alarm is hidden inside the car. After topping first practice for the first time all season, then finishing third in second practice, Verstappen exposed a problem that could affect every driver on the grid. Under the new power unit rules, Spa can drain electrical deployment so early that cars may reach the middle sector without the energy drivers expect. That means changing acceleration, unpredictable closing speeds, and almost no time to react. Verstappen called Spa painful because of the energy problem. And when the fastest driver on Friday ends up in the gravel only hours later, the governing body cannot ignore the warning. Because his mistake may have lasted only seconds, the danger it exposed could shape the entire race. To understand why that moment matters, start with what happened only a few hours earlier. Friday morning had been Red Bull's strongest signal of progress all season. Verstappen topped the first practice session for the first time that year. That result did not guarantee anything, but it changed the mood immediately. Red Bull had moved away from the failure-prone rear wing known as the Macarena wing, and the car suddenly looked more convincing. Verstappen had more speed. The balance appeared stronger. And for the first time in a long time, Red Bull had evidence that its latest gamble might actually work. But Spa never allows a team to celebrate for long. This circuit is not difficult for one single reason. It is difficult because every section asks the car to do something different. The opening part demands huge acceleration. The middle sector demands grip, balance, and confidence. The final section demands speed again. A car can feel brilliant in one area, then completely exposed in the next. Think of it like running a race where the ground keeps changing beneath your feet. First, smooth pavement. Then a steep hill. Then wet grass. Then loose stones. You may still be fast, but you are constantly adjusting. That is what Spa does to a Formula One car. And this year, the problem is even deeper. The new power unit rules place far more pressure on electrical energy. The car begins the lap with battery deployment available, but that energy is not endless. The opening sequence at Spa can use a large part of it almost immediately. The car accelerates hard. It climbs. It continues onto the long straight. And by the time Verstappen reaches the middle sector, the electrical assistance may already be heavily reduced. That changes the feeling of the car. Not only the speed. The feeling. The throttle response may no longer match what the driver experienced earlier in the lap. The acceleration can become weaker. The timing between corners can shift. The driver may arrive at the next braking zone in a slightly different way. That sounds small. At Spa, it is not. A tiny change in speed can alter an entire corner. A tiny delay in power can affect the next straight. A tiny slide can overheat the tires. And once the tires begin to suffer, the driver has an even smaller margin. This is where Verstappen's Stavelot moment begins to make sense as part of a larger story. He ran wide. The Red Bull reached the gravel. Loose stones were thrown onto the racing line. The session had to be stopped while the track was cleared. There is no confirmed investigation specifically connected to that incident. It should not be described as an official steward's case. But it was still a warning. Because Verstappen was not driving slowly. He was searching for the limit of a car that had looked fast in the morning, but was now operating under changing grip, changing balance, and changing electrical power. And the most dangerous part of that combination is uncertainty. A driver can handle a difficult car. A driver can handle reduced power. A driver can handle worn tires. But when all three begin changing at different moments, the car becomes harder to predict. Imagine pressing the accelerator in your road car, but the response is different every time. Sometimes the car moves immediately. Sometimes it hesitates. Sometimes it gives you less power than expected. You could adapt on an empty road. At racing speed, with barriers closed and another car approaching, that delay becomes far more serious. Verstappen had already warned about this. He said he loves Spa, but described it as painful because of the energy. That statement reveals the real conflict. The circuit itself is not the enemy. The energy limitation is. Spa is designed to reward commitment. The driver attacks the climb. The driver carries speed. The driver trusts the car through one of the most demanding laps in Formula One. But if the battery cannot support that attack through the full lap, the driver is forced into a different kind of challenge. Not simply driving faster. Managing when the car is allowed to feel fast. And that changes everything. The driver must think about where to use the electrical power. Where to save it. Where to attack. Where to accept a loss. That may sound like strategy. Inside the cockpit, it becomes pressure. Because the decision is not made once. It changes with traffic. It changes with tire condition. It changes with the position of another car. It changes with the need to defend. And during a race, Verstappen will not have the clean space he had in practice. He may have a rival ahead. Another behind. One car may have more electrical deployment available. Another may have already used most of it. That difference may not be visible until the cars begin accelerating. Then the closing speed can change quickly. One driver expects the car ahead to continue accelerating. The car ahead loses electrical assistance. The gap disappears faster than expected. The reaction must be immediate. That is the concern hidden behind Friday's red flag. Not that Verstappen committed some confirmed offense. He did not. Not that the gravel itself created a crisis. It did not. The problem is that the incident happened at a circuit where the new energy demands are already making drivers uncomfortable. And Verstappen's day showed both sides of Red Bull's situation. In the morning, the team found speed. In the afternoon, the margin disappeared. He went from first in opening practice to third in the next session. Still competitive. Still close. But no longer in complete control of the story. That contrast matters. It suggests Red Bull may have improved the car without removing every weakness. The rear wing change may have restored confidence in one area. The energy problem may still be creating uncertainty somewhere else. And one improvement cannot cancel a problem shared by the entire grid. That is why the governing body must look beyond the gravel. The real question is not whether Verstappen pushed too hard at Stavelot. Formula One drivers are supposed to push. The real question is what happens when 20 cars reach the same high-speed sections with different amounts of electrical power remaining. Some drivers will attack. Some will defend. Some will be recovering energy. Some will be using everything they have left. And none of them can afford to misunderstand the speed of the car beside them. Friday practice gave the first warning. The race will apply the pressure. Because once strategy, traffic, and championship stakes are added, the energy problem will no longer be a technical curiosity. It could decide when a driver can fight, when a driver must back away, and whether the person behind understands the difference before it is too late. But that is only the first layer. The deeper concern is not that the battery runs low. It is what the car does when that happens, and whether the driver can predict the exact moment the performance begins to disappear. The deeper concern begins when electrical deployment stops feeling like a simple power boost, and starts changing the entire rhythm of the lap. Most people imagine battery power as something extra. A temporary push. More speed on the straight. Then less speed when it runs out. But for the driver, it is much more complicated than that. Electrical deployment affects how quickly the car accelerates, how soon it reaches the next braking zone, and how the driver prepares for the next corner. When that assistance changes, the whole sequence changes with it. Imagine walking up a moving escalator. While the escalator is helping, every step feels easy. You reach the top faster than expected. Now imagine the escalator suddenly slowing halfway up. You can keep moving. Nothing has completely stopped. But your body has already prepared for one speed, and now it must react to another. At Spa, that adjustment happens at enormous speed. And it may happen while the driver is already balancing tire grip, steering input, wind, elevation, and traffic. That is why Verstappen's concern goes beyond simply losing time. The real issue is predictability. A Formula One driver builds a lap through reference points. A mark beside the track tells him when to brake. The feeling through the steering tells him how much grip remains. The engine note tells him how quickly the car is accelerating. The movement of the rear tells him how aggressively he can attack. Those signals create confidence. But when the available electrical power changes, some of those references may shift. The driver may arrive at a braking point with less speed than expected. That sounds safer. But it can disrupt the balance of the car. Less speed changes how strongly the aerodynamic surfaces work. It changes how the car settles. It changes how much the tires are loaded. Then, on another lap, the driver may arrive with more deployment available and more speed. Now the same braking point creates a completely different challenge. The corner has not changed. The car's approach to it has. And this is where a manageable problem can become an exhausting one. The driver must constantly recalculate. Not with a calculator. With instinct. A tiny adjustment to braking. A slightly different throttle position. A different line through the corner. A decision to attack now, or protect energy for later. Every one of those choices consumes attention. And attention is not unlimited. At Spa, the driver is already dealing with one of the longest laps on the calendar. There are high-speed sections, heavy braking zones, long corners, elevation changes, and very little room for hesitation. Add unpredictable energy availability, and the mental workload becomes enormous. That does not mean the car suddenly becomes uncontrollable. It means the driver has more chances to misjudge what the car will do next. And one small misjudgment can create the kind of moment Verstappen had at Stavelot. Again, there is no confirmed evidence that electrical deployment directly caused his trip into the gravel. The incident should not be presented that way. But the two things belong to the same Friday story. Verstappen was already warning that Spa would be painful because of energy. Then, during second practice, he pushed beyond the edge of the track and forced a stoppage. The connection is not proof. It is pressure. Pressure from the circuit. Pressure from the new regulations. Pressure from a car that had improved, but still demanded precision. And pressure from a driver who knows that every practice lap must produce answers before the race begins. That creates another problem for Red Bull. The team needs to decide whether Verstappen's pace is truly sustainable. Fastest in opening practice was encouraging. Third in the second session was competitive. But practice positions can hide important differences. Fuel loads may vary. Tire use may vary. Run plans may vary. The source does not provide those details. So the safest conclusion is not that Red Bull had the fastest car. The safest conclusion is that Verstappen showed genuine pace. But genuine pace is only useful if the car can repeat it. That is the test. Can Verstappen produce the same confidence when the tires are older? Can the car remain balanced after several laps? Can the electrical energy be managed without destroying the flow of the circuit? Can Red Bull give him enough performance in the right places, without leaving him exposed somewhere else? And can all of that happen while he is fighting another driver? This is where practice and racing become completely different worlds. In practice, a driver can create space. He can slow down.